Your species isn't strong enough to stand beside the Keth'ara.
Funny. I saved your life before I even knew your name.
The Keth'ara did not ask for help. It was against their code, against their blood. The Keth'ara were the apex warriors of the galactic frontier, 7 feet of granite muscle, bone-plated forearms, and a cultural memory that stretched back 40,000 years without a single recorded surrender. Their females were their generals. Their generals were their gods. And their gods did not fall. Except one did. Field Commander Sora'vel hit the mud of Epsilon Dusk at terminal velocity, her dropship shredded by an ambush she hadn't seen coming. 3 broken ribs. 1 collapsed atmospheric filter on her suit. Hostile jungle on every side, and a distress beacon that would take 6 hours to reach her own fleet. She was going to die on a planet that didn't even have a proper name yet. That was when Eli Vasquez found her. He was a xenobotanist, 31 years old, barely average height, working alone in the deep canopy cataloging fungal networks for the Colonial Science Division. No weapon beyond a utility blade. No combat training beyond the mandatory 2-week course he had mostly slept through. His most dangerous encounter before that morning had been a data dispute with his department supervisor. He looked down at the 7-foot alien warrior bleeding into the jungle floor. He didn't run. He didn't freeze. He knelt down, cracked open his field kit, and got to work. He didn't know who she was. He didn't know what she was. He only knew she was breathing, barely, and that apparently, for Eli Vasquez, that was enough. The Keth'ara did not ask for help. But on Epsilon Dusk, in the mud and the silence, help came anyway. She survived because of him. That part, Sora'vel could not deny. He had sealed the suit breach with thermal bonding tape. He had stabilized her ribs with field splints he made from canopy reeds. Following instructions, he pulled from his xenobiology medical archive on his datapad, adapting human trauma protocols to Keth'ara anatomy in real time, with no guarantee any of it would work. He had carried her 3 kilometers through hostile terrain to his research shelter, which was barely large enough for 1 human, let alone 1 human and a Keth'ara general. She had drifted in and out of consciousness. When she finally opened her eyes fully, 12 hours later, he was asleep sitting upright against the wall, still holding the datapad, her medical readings still open on the screen. She stared at him for a long time. Where her fleet extracted her 4 days later, she said nothing about what had happened. Filed the crash as equipment failure. Listed her survival as self-managed. The Keth'ara did not accept debts, especially not to species classified in council records as soft-bodied noncombatants. But she remembered. 6 months later, Sora'vel returned to Epsilon Dusk without orders. Without escort, she walked into Eli's research shelter at dusk, fully armored, flanked by 2 Keth'ara honor guards who had to bow their heads to fit through the doorway, and announced, in the flat, certain tone of someone who had never been refused anything, that she had decided Eli Vasquez would father her heir. Eli set down his coffee. "I'm sorry," he said. "You want what exactly?" "You've demonstrated survival competence, emotional stability under pressure, and cross-species medical adaptability. These are traits the Keth'ara breed for. You're suitable. I'm a botanist. You saved a Keth'ara commander with tape and reeds." She tilted her head, her copper eyes fixed on him with absolute certainty. "You're not just a botanist." Outside, her fleet held position in low orbit. Not a threat. She hadn't said it was a threat. But 40 Keth'ara warships above a planet made statements without words. Eli looked at the ceiling, then at the honor guards, then at Sora'vel. The stakes had never been more absurd or more real. Eli Vasquez was quiet for 11 seconds. Sora'vel counted. Then he stood up, all 5'10" of him, in a stained field jacket with coffee on his sleeve, and looked her directly in her 4 copper eyes. "No," he said. The honor guard shifted. The word didn't compute immediately in Keth'ara cultural architecture. It was attempted in their direction only by opposing generals and condemned prisoners. "You refuse," Sora'vel said. It wasn't a question. It was a recalibration. "I refuse," Eli confirmed. "But I want to tell you why, because I think you actually deserve an honest answer." She said nothing. That was, apparently, permission. "You came back here because you couldn't forget what happened. I understand that. And I'm not going to pretend I don't know what it means. A Keth'ara commander returning to a debt she won't officially acknowledge. He stepped closer, not challenging, just present. But you don't want an heir. You want proof that what happened between us meant something, that you were worth saving, that I saw something real. The shelter was absolutely silent. Sora'vel's armor, bone-plated and battle-scarred, rose and fell with one long breath. Keth'ara, do not, she began. Feel uncertain? Eli said gently. Yeah, I know. I read everything about your species in 6 days while you were unconscious, because I needed to know if what I was doing was going to actually help you or accidentally kill you. You're not uncertain about the heir. You're uncertain about this, about what you owe someone who helped you when your code said no one should have to. Her 4 eyes held his too. This was the moment, the human moment, the one the Council's observers never cataloged. Not the tape, not the splints, not the data pad brilliance. This, the thing Eli Vasquez did with nothing but words and the audacity to say, I see you, to a 7-foot god who had never been seen before. Sora'vel's hands, gauntlet, enormous, capable of bending steel, dropped slowly to her sides. Then what? She said carefully. Do I owe you? Eli smiled. Breakfast, he said. An actual conversation. Start there. The honor guards are dismissed. The fleet in orbit received a stand-down order that confused 3 admirals and generated a formal inquiry that Sora'vel never bothered to answer. She sat across from Eli Vasquez in a shelter built for one, drinking something he called terrible instant coffee and describing it, very seriously, as the worst substance she had encountered in 40 years of interstellar warfare. They talked for 4 hours. She told him about the ambush. The real one, not the filed report. How she had made the mistake. How it had felt to fall. He told her about the moment he found her. How he'd been terrified the entire time. How he'd talked to her while she was unconscious because he read somewhere that hearing a calm voice helped. And he didn't know if that was true for Keth'ara, but it seemed worth trying. She was quiet after that for a long moment. You talked to me, she said. The whole time, he said. Mostly about fungal networks. You didn't seem to mind. Somewhere above Epsilon Dusk, 40 warships held position around a planet where a xenobotanist with tape and reeds had done what 40 years of Keth'ara military doctrine had never managed. He had made their greatest warrior feel safe enough to sit still. The Council would never write a report about this. There was no category for it, no classification, no threat assessment for a species that met a god falling from the sky and said, I've got you, before asking a single question. They would update their records eventually. They always did, but they would always be too late. We don't conquer with weapons. We conquer with the audacity to care. And that is the thing no armor in the universe was ever built to stop.